Honey, the way that Tiff is about to get away with what she did to Nuck lets me know that both Rob, Alicia, and the rest of the ancestors are definitely looking out for her. Okay? Hey, y'all. Welcome back to my channel review where we talk about all things television and film from today and yesteryear. So I wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on the recent episode of The Shy Season 8. Emmett and Darnell are at the men's clothing store. Emmett is trying on suits, honey, getting ready to be somebody's husband. And, he and his dad are just having a conversation. Darnell is telling Emmett, he's proud of the man that he's becoming, and the things he has to look forward to with being married. And then they also get into the conversation about the whole magic trick chick. Okay. So he's like, Dad, did you find out where she at? If I'm gonna be able to get my watch back. And Darnell was like, yeah, I'm working on it. I got a couple of leads, so I'm gonna see what we're gonna be able to do. I'm gonna set something up. And Darnell also tells Emmett, he was like, I'm surprised that you told Keisha about the whole situation with the watch. And he was like, yeah, I had to tell her, I couldn't keep that from her. So, you know, Emmett ends up going off in his thoughts, honey. He gets kind of quiet. And Darnell was like, what's going on, son? And Emmett was like, it's just some stuff I got to let Keisha know I need to talk to her about. And Darnell was like, well, you could talk to me. And Emmett was like, not about this. This is something I have to discuss specifically with Keisha. And Darnell was like, see, son, you already acting like somebody's husband. So while Emmett is getting suited up, honey, Keisha and Tiff are at the bridal shop, and Keisha is trying on wedding dresses. And, it's a happy moment for Keisha, but still somber because of the whole situation with Nug. And we also get to see Tiff's reaction. She gets teary eyed because we know that Tiff thought that she would be having this moment in preparation to marry Rob. And unfortunately, that's just not going to happen for her.
I guess I am feeling a little crazy right now.
I get that.
How you doing?
I'm grieving.
So am I.
Shad goes to see Bakari, and Bakari is packing up to get ready to move to Atlanta. And Shad is like, what's in Atlanta? And, Bakari is just like, no, I don't know. It's just a change of scenery. I need to get out of the Shy. And Shad is like, well, ain't no place like the Shy. And, Bakari is like, yeah, I know, but it's just some things that I need to do. I need to get away from here. I need to change things. And so Shad is having a conversation with Bakari, letting him know that he does have things to look forward to in Chicago, that he doesn't necessarily have to run away from his problems. And in this moment, I was like, okay, Shad, clearly you don't know how deep Bakari's hands are in the mix. Okay. Like he literally has gotten himself in too much mess, but we do get to see how things kind of turn around for Bakari later on in the episode. So we get to see the detective have a conversation with Alicia's friend, the judge who is married to Professor Wayne, who we have not seen this season at all. Okay, so the detective, I think her name is Toussaint, Detective Toussaint, she lets the judge know that she would like to get a search warrant to search Alicia's old home where Tiff is currently staying. She goes into the whole diatribe of how she feels that Tiff is the person who unalived her informant, aka Nuck, because Nuck is the person who unalived Tiff's baby daddy, Rob. And of course, the judge is like, girl, you're going to have to come with a little bit more evidence if you want me to give you a search warrant. Like, I can't just be handing out search warrants all willy nilly for you because you have a hunch about something. You're going to have a little bit more than that. And of course, the detective is hell bent on searching Tiff's home because she feels like if she is granted that opportunity, that she will be able to find something to show that Tiff indeed is the person who took Nuck out because of the whole situation with Rob.
This is the mother of Rob's child.
I know.
Alicia had a special place in her heart for this young lady.
I think they have a lot in common.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You tell me.
So Darnell and Riley, aka Minnie the Moocher, they are scrolling through social media trying to find out what information they could get on the magician chick. And honey, ma'am has been scamming all types of people. Okay, so Darnell, he proceeds to let Riley know that this woman is doing all these magic shows, and the main thing that's disappearing is people's property. Okay, like she is just stealing from everybody. So Minnie the Moocher, she was like, well, let me see if we got any mutual friends, and if we can track her down like that. And ultimately, they are able to get a location on the magician. So the detective ends up getting a search warrant for Tiff's home. And unfortunately, they literally find nothing. They tear that home upside down. And the only thing they end up taking is like money and things out of the safe. But anything that would have turned up any information as to what happened to Nook, or anything to tie Nook to Rob and Tiff to Nook, she was not able to uncover anything. Devontae mom's pop back up. She wants her son to come back home, and Devontae is not here for it. She is having a back and forth with Emmett and Keisha, and saying, he had a weapon on him, took a weapon to school, and Devontae was like, that's not their fault. And the mom is shocked because she was like, when you started taking accountability for your actions. And Devontae, he was like, well, Riley tells me that being honest is something that I need to do, that's going to develop me into a better person. And, the his mom is like, who is Riley? And Emmett is like, that's my dad's new girlfriend. And of course, she's like, your dad always got a girlfriend or whatever. But we do see later on in the episode that Devontae's mom agrees to let him stay, in Chicago with Keisha and Emmett. Jake, Reg, and Vic are, they're going through their mom's things, going through all these photos. And, at first it seems like Vic is just uninterested. Jake and Reg seem to be more, excited about seeing old photos of them. And, they end up holding up this one picture with the three of them, and they start talking about how their mom loved to take pictures, how she always just loved to photograph her kids and just moments in their lives. And this is the first time I think that the three of them, outside of when they had dinner with their mom, that they were actually civil with one another and seemed like they were enjoying being brothers. And at the end of the day, I think they were all reminded that, hey, regardless of how we feel about each other, when it comes down to it, we all we got. And, I just thought that this was a pretty decent, heartfelt moment between the three of them, even though I still don't like Reg. Okay.
You ain't sad she gone.
I'm sad. Sad she spent most of her life in pain.
You think she at peace now?
Hope so.
Me too. And don't forget what she said either.
She said a lot of shit.
She said to always protect each other. No matter what.
I remember.
Bakari and Lene have a conversation. Bakari lets her know everything that has been happening between him and Tiff. He tells her that Tiff is the one that took Nook out, but wants Bakari to take the blame for it. And Lene was like, why would you have to do that? And he says she felt away because I didn't tell her that Nook is the one who took Rob out. And Bakari was like, but, I'm not going down for it. And of course, Lene, she says that she feels like everything is her fault. She was like, I should have just kept the voice note to myself. What if Tiff tries to do something to you? She could come after us. And Bakari is like, nah, don't even think like that. He is basically reassuring Lene that she ain't got nothing to worry about, that at this point, he going to do what he got to do to make sure that he not only does not go down for something he did not do, but that their backs are covered. And we do see how that unfolds later on in the episode.
I got a voice note that proves Nook killed Rob.
Where'd you get it?
I can't tell you that.
Send it to me.
Okay.
Once I find a body, I'll make sure you and your girl are safe.
So Bakari goes over to Tiff's house. I'm assuming Tiff called him over there. And she is like, how did Detective Toussaint know who I was? And Bakari was like, look, I wasn't about to go down for what you did. And Big he was like, but you agreed to do it. And Bakari was like, nah, I'm not with it. I'm not doing it. And so Tiff is like, I'm not going down for it either. And Bakari was like, well, look, either you're going to let me go or you're going to have to do what you got to do. And so Tiff pulls out the blicky like she is about to pop Bakari. And he just stands up like, okay, what you gonna do? And of course, Vic, he gets in between them. He was like, you just need to leave. You need to go. And Tiff, she tells Vic, she's like, you don't run things around here. You do what I tell you to do. And Vic was like, not anymore. Like, he is basically like, I got to take control of this situation because Tiff is too emotional. Tiff wants to be hardcore so bad, but she's not. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, girl, you already put your foot in your mouth too many times. This whole situation is out of control because of you, because you will not utilize your free right to shut the F up. So Darnell links up with the magician and he was like, you something else. Like, you be around here scamming people. And the girl was like, look, times are hard. I got to do what I got to do. And Darnell was like, yeah, but you can't be around here just scamming people. People paying you for entertainment, not for you to really make stuff disappear completely. You know what I'm saying? And so she ends up giving him back Emmett's watch. And she was like, tell your son, my bad. It is what it is. It's nothing personal. It's just business, basically.
Tell your son I said sorry.
Oh, hey, I still don't know how you got that random card my son pulled from the deck tattooed to your ass.
It's a deck full of the same card.
Oh, that was good.
So we get this moment where Emmett is dreaming and we get all these flashbacks of him and his mom, Jada. And actually, in this episode, we get a lot of flashback moments, but this particular moment was, just his relationship with his mom. At one point, Emmett and his mom, they didn't see eye to eye because he didn't want to do right by his kids. And, Jada was not here for it. So once we get the flashback of his relationship with Jada, we get this moment where he actually sees his mom. And remember when early on in the episode, in the season, when Emmett said he never saw his mom, and Darnell says she'll show up in your dreams when you really need her most. And so we get to see Jada. I was so happy to see her. She looks so pretty, and she's in this garden full of all these beautiful white flowers. And, Emmett walks up to her, and he was like, "Ma," and she's like, "Hey, son." But I think what threw me in this moment, why didn't he hug her? That just kind of threw me because I was like, I would thought the first thing they would have done to each other was embrace each other. But Jada, she just kept cutting the flowers. And, he ends up telling her, I really need to talk to you. And she was like, what's going on? He was like, it's Keisha. And she was like, well, what's going on with Keisha? And, he tells her that it's something that he really needs to tell her, but he's afraid. And Jada said, if you're afraid, it's because you really care. And so I was glad to see her. I was glad that they didn't end the season with us not getting to see him, have this moment with his mom. So I was glad that we got to see this. So after Emmett wakes up from his dream, he wakes Keisha up and he tells her that he needs to talk to her. And this is the moment where he lets Keisha know what actually happened. He tells her that Tiff is the person who took Nuck out. And the reason why Tiff took Nuck out is because Nuck took out Rob. And, Keisha, she starts crying and she was like, how long have you known this? Emmett tells her, I've known for about a week. And she was like, you kept that from me? And he was like, well, Vic told me not to say anything to you. And she was like, are you choosing him over me? And Emmett was like, no. Like, he's like, I'm not choosing anybody over you. I just didn't know how to tell you because, he knew it was going to be a bunch of mess. He was like, the whole situation is effed up. And of course, Keisha was like, I can't believe Tiff been smiling in my face this whole time, knowing what she did. Now, I have to say this. I was very surprised at how Keisha reacted to the information from Emmett. I was very surprised at how she handled it. I was very shocked because I just expected her to be completely pissed. I was afraid that she was going to try to maybe break up with Emmett. I was like, so I was very surprised at how calm she was, and I was very happy that she did not take it out on Emmett. And to the point of where she was like, I don't want to marry you or anything like that. That would really surprise me. But she once she got the information, she told Emmett that she was going to go talk to Tiff, that she needed to see her and talk to her. So Keisha makes her way over to Tiff's home, and we get this flashback of the trajectory of their relationship. Okay. So we get to see how their friendship develops into sisterhood. At first, the two of them didn't see it for each other because they were both beefing over Emmett. And, we get to see them develop into these young women who, develop this sisterhood, aka sister wives, because that's what they are. Okay. But nonetheless, we just get to see how the two of them just grew up together, and their mothers, and living life, and finding their footing, as far as Tiff with her entrepreneurship, and with Keisha, being an educator. And so to see what they came from and to end up in the moment that they currently are, it's kind of messed up, but Tiff is to blame for that. So Keisha, she confronts Tiff, but I have to say it was not confrontational, if that makes sense. Keisha, she is just like, I can't believe that you took my son's father from him. And Tiff was like, well, he took my son's father from me first. So it was like tit for tat. Tiff was like, I did what I had to do. And, I have to say, Keisha was very calm, just the way that she handled this overall. But I think it was because she was more hurt than anything. Because again, the whole speech that they gave to one another at the bachelorette party, it was just very heartfelt. And, with Keisha feeling like Tip was her sister, again, I just think she is just more hurt than anything. And we knew that this would happen. I was like, when this comes out, it's a wrap. Like, because it's like Tiff literally was smiling in Keisha's face, knowing that behind her back, she did her dirty. And I feel like even if Tiff had a conversation with Keisha when she found out that Nuck was the one who took out Rob, before Tiff, took Rob out, I think even if she had a conversation with Keisha, Keisha would have been like, you know, do things differently. She would have probably talked Tiff out of getting her revenge on Nuck. And I think that in that moment, that just wasn't a risk that Tiff was willing to take. Like, she wanted vengeance for what happened to Rob, and rightfully so. Nuck had it coming. But unfortunately, it was going to be to the demise of her and Keisha's relationship, because, once the conversation was had between Keisha and Tiff, Keisha, she, felt like the reason why, Tiff wanted to, fund the wedding and everything is because she felt guilty. I mean, I felt that way. Okay. It was obvious that that was her guilt talking. But Tiff wants to say, oh no, I just felt like one of us should have the wedding of our dreams. Like, girl, please. That was guilt talking, through your money. Okay. And, but I guess it doesn't matter because Keisha pretty much told Tiff she didn't want to have anything to do with her, and she didn't want Tiff to have anything to do with her wedding.
Is that why you agreed to pay for my wedding? Because you felt guilty? I agreed to pay for it because one of us deserves the wedding of our dreams. I don't want you to pay for my wedding. I don't even want you at the wedding. To be honest, I don't want you in my life.
Detective Toussaint goes to Tiff's house to arrest Tiff. Okay. And just like I thought, Vic ends up saying that he's the one who took Nuck out. Before he does that, Tiff is just telling him, hey, take baby Rob, make sure you call my attorney. Tiff, she was just going to eat it, basically. And here comes Vic being Captain Save-A-Ho, not calling Tiff a hoe, just a phrase. But anyway, he playing Captain Save-A-Ho, honey, and he tells the detective that he's the one who took Nuck out. He confesses, and the detective was like, are you sure you want to do this? He was like, yeah. So they end up taking Vic down and they lock him up. So Fatima goes to see Vic, and she knows that Vic did not unalive Nug. She knows that he should not be in jail, and she pretty much tells him, "You don't need to be here. What are you doing?" And he is just like, "Look, I'm gonna take this heat for Tiff. Tiff got kids. She can't be locked up." And so Fatima was like, "But you don't need to be locked up either. This is not the type of person you are. You don't need to be in here." And he was like, "No, I'm just gonna do this. Ain't nothing out there for me." And Fatima was like, "There are people out here who care about you." And he was like, "Who?" It's just like me. And he was like, "Oh man, kind of like, dang, I wish you had told me this before I got locked up for this heifer." But it is what it is at this point.
It might be time to let him go.
No, girl.
Had to let my man go.
What happened?
Really said I was too much.
You are.
I know, but I need someone that can handle all of me.
Okay, well, you could just tone it down.
I would rather be by myself than be something I'm not.
Even if that means being alone for the rest of your life?
If that's what God has for me, it is what it is. But I don't think God will do me like that.
So Jake and Reg are having a conversation. Jake basically tells Reg that you got to go see Vic. Vic did not do what he said he did. And Reg was like, "It ain't my fault that he's sitting up here admitting to a crime that he did commit. Like, what I'm going to do? He ain't going to listen to me anyway." And so we end up getting another flashback, okay? And we get to see the whole situation with Jake and Reg. Like, how Reg basically had Jake in the streets as a young kid. I honestly did not remember all this. Like I said, I never saw it for Reg. I always knew he was a grimy dude. But when they started doing these flashbacks, I was like, man, he really had Jake out here in these streets like that. Like, Jake wasn't scared of nothing and nobody. And, this is what I meant by when you could just see the difference between Reg and Vic and how their relationship with Jake, how it was completely different. Reg was all about street life, cutthroat. He did not care. And then when Vic came and he started looking out for Jake, you could see the change in Jake, how he just started to be more conscious and more aware of the things that he was doing and the decisions that he was making. This is where he started to get more into entrepreneurship and just started making money legit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't trying to be in the streets anymore. And so once Reg came out of, we got to see Jake kind of slide back into that whole mentality just a little bit, but not enough to where he couldn't turn back, to where he couldn't go back. And like I said, it was just like Reggie was such a bully to Jake. It's like, dude, you're gonna do what I tell you to do, because he had such a heavy impact on Jake when Jake was younger. And then once Jake got older and he got to see things differently, he got to see things through the lens of Vic and how Vic was, he was just basically changing his life around, just all the different things that Vic tried to do for himself. Jake got to see that as an example. And so when it all boiled down to it, when it comes back around to what is going on now with Vic and Vic wanting to take the rap for Tiff, Jake was like, you can't let him sit in jail. He don't deserve to be there. And, he tells Reg, you owe me. He basically lets Reg know that you owe me. So the least that you could do is go talk to Vic. And surprise, surprise, honey, Reg does just that. Not only does Reg go to see Vic, he tells Vic that he gonna take the rap for him. I have to say that surprised me. I was not expecting Reg to do that. I still don't like him, but I appreciated the fact that he is willing to take the rap for his brother. And he says, Vic, he says, I'm gonna take the rap. And Vic was like, no, you're not. He was like, I am. He said, I owe you. And Vic was like, you don't owe me nothing. And he was like, I'm gonna do it. And he does. So we get a moment where the kids are at the youth center and Devontae is reading a couple of inserts from a book. And once he's done, the boys are in awe because they can all pretty much relate to some of the things that the author has written. And, one of the kids, he was like, wow, I never heard a book like that before. Like they are just kind of like, this is cool that, there are people out there who can relate to some of the things that we have gone through or some of the things that we've experienced in life. And of course, the kids were quite shocked to find out that Bakari was indeed the author of the book. And so I think in this moment, this brought me back to the conversation that he and Shad had earlier in the episode, where Shad was just basically letting Bakari know that, going to Atlanta, it may seem like it's a good idea, but you have things, here that are still important. And so the fact that Shad, because I'm assuming Shad is the person who got the books to the kids, you know what I'm saying? The fact that he, um, got that book for those boys to read, and just for Bakari to see their reaction to his work. I'm wondering now if Bakari is going to not go to Atlanta, if he is going to continue to stay in Chicago.
Would y'all want to meet the author?
Yeah.
Go.
You wrote this?
I did.
Was it hard?
Yeah, it was.
How long did it take you?
So long I didn't think I was gonna finish.
I'm glad you did.
Reg lets his girlfriend know that he got to go away, and he's going to be gone for a while. Of course, she's not happy about it. She doesn't understand, exactly what it is he feel like he needs to do. He really doesn't go into detail with her about what the situation is, but he does let her know that he put some money away for her, so she should be good. So Darnell and Riley, aka Minnie the Moocher, they approach Shad at the youth center. Shad is sweeping the floors, and they say, "Hey, we need to talk to you." And so Shad, he's kind of nervous at first. He's like, "Is everything okay?" And Darnell was like, "Yeah, everything's cool." And then he looks at Minnie the Moocher. He was like, "Am I getting a raise?" And she was like, "Nah, that ain't it either." And so he was like, "Oh, okay then." So Darnell proceeds to tell Shad that he wants to give him his house. He was like, "The home I had with Jada," he said, "I want to give it to you." He said, "I can't live there, and I want you to have it." And Shad was like, "What?" He was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Nah, man." He's like, "You can get a lot of money for that house. You got a lot of grandkids. Like you can get a lot of money." And so Darnell was like, "I don't want to sell my home. I don't want just anyone living there." He said, "I want to give it to you." He said, "Your impatience are getting serious." He said, "So I want to give you the opportunity, to be able to grow and develop with her. And, I want you to live in a house. I want you to fill that house with love." And so, of course, Shad is, he's in shock. He's verklempt. He's very emotional, but he's very grateful. And, he's in disbelief, and he just can't believe it. And he says, he's like, "Well, I got to pay you, for letting me stay there." And, Darnell says, "Well, we can come up with some type of payment plan that's going to benefit us both." And, Shad, he's just in shock. And he does say, he get around to saying, "Well, where y'all going to stay?" And of course, Darnell lets him know that Keisha and Emmett are fine with them living there. There's like, for once, adults finally, there are more adults in the house than kids. So, and they want the kids to be raised with in a 3-generational household or something like that. And, I was like, I'm glad that Darnell decided to give Shad his home, but I'm wondering now that Shad has this opportunity, to be in his own space, if he's going to let everything go that happened with Alicia and Nora, the whole situation with Rosalind. Will he just wash his hands of it completely and just, take advantage of this new opportunity that he has by having his own? You know what I'm saying? I hope that that is going to be the case, because, with the last couple of episodes, we haven't really seen him press, anyone about the whole situation with Rosalind. So I'm hoping that this is the moment that Shad is pretty much just going to let everything go.
Can't believe you doing this, man.
You deserve to be happy, bro.
That means a lot to me.
Now look, there's a couple of things I need to work on before y'all get in there, but...
Well, we can work on it together.
That's even better.
Yeah. Wow.
Reg pulls up on the detective and he tells her, look, you're going to have to let my brother out. And she's like, why is that? And he was like, because he didn't take Nuck out. I did. And she was like, are you sure about that? He was like, yeah. And, she's like, well, how do I know, you telling the truth? And Reg says, because I know where the body is. So the police retrieve Nuck's body. And my thing is this, did they get Nuck's body from the backyard? Because when we saw Tiff and Vic digging a grave, it was in the backyard of the house. So I'm wondering if that is where they got Nuck's body from, or if the body was moved. Because of course we didn't get to see a conversation had between Tiff and Reg, letting Tiff know that he was going to take the blame or whatever. So I'm like, how did Reg find out where the body was? I'm assuming maybe he found out from Vic, or did they move the body so the body would not be on the premises, at the home where Tiff was. Nonetheless, they got Nuck's body and we see Reg get arrested. Now, this is the thing. Reg was in them streets bad. He was either going to end up in a casket or he was going to end up back in jail. So I guess he figured if I'm going back to jail, it's going to be on my own accord. So here we are. A lot of stuff happened in this episode that I did not address in this recap because for me, the whole situation with the manager at Smokey's and Calla Pratt's character and Carucci, they are just seat fillers, okay? I do not understand why Smitty and all of them, like, it's like y'all just trying to fill a position, okay, on the show. I do not understand why we have not gotten any information on why Nuck took out Pastor Zeke. Okay. We do not know where that stemmed from. The last time we saw Nuck and Pastor Zeke together, they were, he was Nuck's confidant. You know what I'm saying? He was able to tell him stuff. So it's just a lot of stuff that I feel like, in the event of the next episode being the series finale, a lot of unanswered things. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that, again, that the professor, okay, Professor Wayne, I do not like the fact that he has not been on this season because Bakari, to me, needed him, more than ever with everything that he has had going on. So I don't know. And is Kevin going to show up? If the last episode is going to consist of Emmett and Keisha's wedding, are we going to get to see Kev? Are we going to get to see Keisha's mom? We haven't seen her since she left with the brat. Like, it's just, I don't know. I'm just curious how everything is going to turn out. And is Tiff hands going to really be clean of this whole situation with Nuck? You know what I'm saying? And was the body moved? Because again, it seems as though they was burying him in the backyard. And, so that to me would incriminate Tiff if his body was still there. Nonetheless, we shall see how everything is going to wrap up with this show. Well, that's all I have for you guys in this video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.